Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm pretty good.
Good.
I know it's been a busy week or so we didn't have a chance to collaborate much on topics, but I put a few options in the notes if you want to take a moment and see if any of them strike your fancy.
I did read them a little bit earlier, and I thought even option one was good. I feel a little more comfortable with option one than option two.
Yeah,
At least talking about it.
option two I think needs a little more time to digest. That one came across my radar late this evening and I plopped it in.
Yeah, and under option three, I just want to say that like the UI design for almost all entertainment things that are either built in or connected to your TV are subpar relative to other UIs that exist in the world.
Oh, definitely. But I know we've got a handful of like small topics that have mentioned that in some way, and I thought we could easily do a show about it as well.
I think so. Because I've thought about it. Like I've thought about like even like specific applications that I use pretty regularly, and I've used WebOS 3 something, 3 point something, maybe 3.5, whatever's whatever WebOS is like doesn't support like Hulu's live TV, whatever that one is. Like the highest one that doesn't support that. I've used that one.
I kind of felt like that might be a good intermediary topic between last week's episode or the one that published yesterday, the speculation, and then the event itself.
Actually, I think that's a good idea. Maybe we just re-chose our topic.
Well, and it keeps it relatively light because the other one I kind of want to do a little more of a deep dive on anyway, and I feel like it doesn't fit in between WWDC speculation and WWDC thoughts.
True. And we'll probably next week want to talk about Dub as well. And I don't know if we might have this conversation or a conversation that I thought of that we should have might not be in the final cut, but I had this idea for like a a secondary podcast, or like reoccurring something or another, enough that it might warrant a second podcast, maybe monthly or something like that.
Yeah, I'm certainly game. We probably ought to have a quick sidebar at some point in the next week anyway, just to talk about the potential reintroduction of the after show and whether that's a part of the main feed or a members only feed or what, and kind of get our heads wrapped around going forward after next week's episode.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds good.
So with that, what prompted me to put a note in about WebOS is that about once a year, I decide to plug up the smart TV and at least update the software so that it is at least getting updates, not because I use it, but because I don't want to find myself sitting on a version of the OS that cannot be updated to a supported version, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so last week I plugged in my TV and my receiver and let them both do the assorted firmware updates, software updates that were available for them. The receiver doesn't really get much anyway, but the TV, I went from WebOS 4, had to update to 5 whatever, and then had to update to 6 whatever, and it stair-stepped it. But each iteration still looked generally the same. So I assume prior to 4 looked similar to 4. That may be a bad assumption. But it just struck me how absolutely horrid that interface was to use just to perform the software update, much less even trying to use it to actually consume content.
How does it compare to Windows updates in the 90s?
I would take Windows updates over.
Whoa.
Well, all right. The update mechanism itself was fine. And so from that perspective, the LG WebOS is better. But the navigation is so absolutely horrible that I can't wrap my head around people who don't know better thinking that it's usable or enjoyable.
Here's the thing that I found. It's not that people don't know better. It's that people don't care. Like there's just a whole bunch of people. They don't notice something not because it's bad or there's better, but they just don't care. It's not something that's important to them.
Yeah, that general concept is something I struggle so much with understanding, because if the interface is that bad, and even if I don't know that something better exists, I just know it's absolutely horrible, I would be searching out alternatives just to see what else is available to me that might make my experience better.
Yeah, I don't. But there's a level of caring that it's like it gets the job done. Like it's like I mean I'm with you. Like I'm around a person that's like that a lot about certain things that are very detail specific, and I'm like, it's like I think I've used the example of my mom. She would always come and see my TV, and she's like, "It's just so clear," and I'm like, "Yeah, it's HD," and I was like, "You have an HD TV too, but it's not clear," and I was like, "But you have to watch the HD channels." I was like, and then when she's watching her TV at home, she's like, "These look fine to me. They look completely and totally fine to me." I was like, "Does it look as good as my TV?" I was like, "I don't remember."
Yeah, it is just such an alien concept to me.
Me too.
I mean, I do get it. I certainly have met a number of people that could care less. They just want to consume the content, and they take whatever is available, and that's how they watch whatever they want to watch. And I do wonder how much of that is just an ingrained general personality quirk, for lack of any better phrasing, where I'm going to seek out something that is more pleasing for the experience and aesthetically appreciative, or that I am more aesthetically appreciative of, than something that is just purely a practical solution to a problem. Because yes, I could use WebOS and I could navigate through the abysmal horizontal scrolling placard of inputs and apps and call it a day, and of course have to manually type all sorts of stuff with the up-down arrows on a virtual keyboard, and never mind the whole experience of being able to just autofill credentials or TV provider info from something stored in the cloud. But just the basic usage of scrolling through these tab things.
I know what you're talking about.
Something, I don't even know how you describe those. What are they?
So I have an LG TV, and it is on a version of WebOS that's below 3.5. 3.5 was what was required for Hulu Live. So my TV will support Hulu's streaming, but it won't support Hulu Live. It has to have WebOS 3.5, and my TV won't ever be able to get that. LG refused to update or provide a software update beyond 3. Whatever below 3.5 is that's on it. It might be a 3.1 something. It might be a 3. I don't know. Anyway, but there's just they're kind of like if the UI is similar enough, there's a combination. There's like several different ways you can see the UI. There's like tiles on the bottom, I would call them, and you can move through them. And sometimes they're like really like rectangular tiles at an angle, or they're more rhombus tiles or trapezoid tiles. Is that still the same?
Yeah, that's exactly what the at least the default view of WebOS 6 whatever presents. I don't know if there's a way to change that view. I haven't looked close enough because I am still the type of person that I would rather have a dumb TV and let everything go through the intermediary of my choice. And so I haven't taken enough time to really try to understand the UI either.
I said rhombus, but they're parallelograms. There's like a parallelogram that's kind of like a close to or they show up as like equal-sided parallelograms that are slanted toward the top, where the top is slanted towards the left. So it slants from left to right, top to bottom, and for some reason, like you see them sort of like where they have all equal sides, or they're elongated, where the top to bottom links are longer than the left to right links.
Yeah, so on mine, their top to bottom lengths are longer, and they're slanted the opposite direction. So top right slanted down to bottom left.
Huh. That's, maybe I'm misremembering, but I feel like mine's the opposite of that. Regardless, do you ever see a view where the lines going from top to bottom and the lines going from left to right are close enough to equal that it looks like they're equal?
Not so far, no.
Yeah, so I've seen where it's one or the other, and I can't remember why it's one versus the other. But then, like, if you try to do something with the settings, you have like circles that pop down in an arc on the right side of the TV. Do you have that?
Yes, that part is still, it's like 5 circles, and you go through them, and then you can go to it's like a more triple dot thing at the very bottom that opens up a traditional slide over panel of settings.
Yeah, and every time, I just want a goddamn rectangle that shows me that obscures the entire view. I mean, I'd rather obscure the entire view than whatever the hell artistic thing that they're trying to do here with the circles.
And the other thing that irritates me now that did not irritate me before, since updating to WebOS 6, when I wake the TV from sleep, it gives a menu overlay of the LG WebOS parallelograms that fades away after a moment over top of my Apple TV screen.
Yeah, I never want to see anything that has to do with the TV. The volume is fine. Like when I adjust the volume, that's okay. That's about it. Like because like when I got my TV, I do this to all my TVs. I turn off all the artifact bullshit. I turn off all the computer compensation bullshit that they have turned on to somehow make the picture better. I mean, hey, if you like it, you like it. But I don't like my TVs looking like soap operas. Like I don't like watching something that's in like cinematic 24 frames per second looking like a soap opera, because all of this noise reduction artifact stuff is trying to make the picture look better, smoother. I don't know. I don't like it. I like the way TV used to look, and so I turn all of that off. And then I never want to see the UI from the TV ever again. And I'm a person who used the WebOS UI for a few years. I did use it for a few years, even though it's garbage.
Yeah, I've never, I think it's pretty clear I've never actually used it enough to do anything other than figure out where to update it. But now I'm going to have to use it enough to figure out how to turn off it showing me the menu ever again. If that's even possible. It may not be possible. On the positive side, though, it only pops up for maybe 2 seconds, 3 seconds. It's somewhere in that time frame. So by the time I turn everything on and then go grab the remote for the Apple TV, it's gone. So it's not that horrible, I guess. But the fact that I see it at all just irritates me. It gets under my skin quickly. Because I don't even want to see the volume stuff from the TV. I have all that through a receiver unit. And so I want that display to be what shows up when I adjust volume, and only that one.
Yeah, you should never. With the receiver, you should never see the TV volume display. I don't have a receiver, so I'm okay seeing the TV volume. But that 2 to 3 seconds where you get the parallelograms, that's 2 to 3 seconds too long, you know?
Yeah, it is. And I do kind of get why that would be a change in behavior. You know, if you think about most people not going through a receiver, you probably want that reminder of what input it's on, and then it fades away. Like, I can honestly at least make a case for why that would be beneficial if I did not have a receiver in the mix. But I use the receiver for the general inputs so that I can, apply a slightly more fine-tuned control over each input. And so it's strange to me that behavior changed with an OS update, given that there's only one input plugged into the TV and it never changes. I could see where maybe if they had done something smart with, oh, you have more than one input, we'll give you a reminder of what input it's on and then fade it away.
Right. You know, like my LG TV, it's I've got 2 inputs that I use, and I actually do quite like this feature. If I'm on HDMI 2, which I have a Roku connected to it, and an Xbox 360 connected to HDMI 1. If you turn on the Xbox 360 while it's on HDMI 2, a little heads up, like you get the icon to switch it, so you can push the button on the remote to switch it over, and that's pretty nice. I like that. That way, because they've solved a problem that they've created. It used to be, or like a little bit older TV, like the TV I have in my room, you could push the source button and it'll cycle through all the sources. So if you want to get to the source that you just passed, you have to cycle through all of them. That's kind of a pain in the ass, but that's sort of what we're used to. But this, it's like if you're, like I'm on HDMI 2 and the Xbox 360 is on HDMI 1, I don't have to cycle through them. I can just push the button because it pops up, and that's pretty nice. But if you miss it, then you still don't have to cycle through it, but you have to go click through all the parallelograms depending on where your cursor lands, because I actually have a cursor on there, which is a pain in the ass because I'd rather use just the D-pad. It's all very I understand what they were thinking, trying to do, what they thought the use case was, but it's not customizable enough for people who do like the opposite of their use case or very different than their expected use case.
It's also pretty interesting listening to you describe how you have things set up, because I tend to forget that not everyone has one of the Harmony remotes that you can program different scenes into.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's something that I picked up, God, I don't even know how long ago now. Like I've had one for at least a decade.
Well, I was going to say, I know we talked about it in the GR. Like you and I talked about Harmony remotes in the GR because I was very close to getting one. I never did because I just didn't have enough stuff to really justify, that kind of remote.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing that it really shines if you change between inputs more than once or twice every couple of days. It reduces a level of friction that you don't realize exists until you don't have it available for a little bit.
No, I'm well aware of the friction. It's just that I just don't have I don't have quite enough friction to where it would make sense. But let me ask you, does the Harmony remote control the Apple TV?
It can.
Oh, interesting.
I don't use it for that. I do have it set up where it can, so that if I want to just press menu or something because I happen to have that remote in my hand, I have it available. So especially with the previous generation Siri remote, if I had misplaced it, I could very easily control the TV without having to go find it. But my general use case is the version of the Harmony remote that I've got has a kind of touchscreen panel in the middle. And when you wake it up, you can select from a number of different scenes that you have programmed. And so most of the time what I'll do is I'll pick it up and I'll press a button that just says watch Apple TV. And then theoretically I could just control the Apple TV at that point, but then I put that remote down and grab the Siri remote and sit back and enjoy my time on the couch, just shuffling through with the Siri remote. But then if I want to swap to the PlayStation or the Switch to play something, I just grab the Harmony remote and choose that particular scene, quote unquote. Or if I want to listen to music, or I think I have 6 or 7 different scenes that change inputs and stuff around for me. And so I really use it as a glorified task switcher. Part of why I do it that way, though, is because I can also control it with the app on the phone. And so even if I don't want to go grab the remote, I can just pick up the phone and choose the corresponding scene and have all of my inputs selected. And yes, I could still use even the phone as the remote for that input, but 9 times out of 10, I'm either swapping between the Apple TV and the PlayStation or vice versa. And so I would rather use the native input mechanism for the device I'm switching to, just because it feels more natural.
That makes a lot of sense. I don't have enough stuff to use a Harmony remote. I actually forgot about the remote that I did get. It wasn't a Harmony remote, but it was kind of like Philips' version of it. I remember buying it, and I used it for a number of years until I think it had internal battery, like a rechargeable battery, until it just stopped working, and there wasn't a way to replace it. But I remember using it because I had a Philips TV, so I thought, okay, I'll try this, and I used it for. I'm having the hardest time remembering how I actually used it, but I must have used it with my first Roku and the TV, or maybe a Blu-ray player. No, but I think I got it after I was using Plex, so I think I used it with a Roku.
And the main reason I went the Harmony route was because it was a way to control the TV and the receiver without having to have both of those remotes handy. So I could stash those and have one remote where if I wanted to change settings for those 2 devices, I could. It just so happens to also be able to control the other devices that I have plugged in, but I never got used to using it for those. So, if you think about having a pile of, say, 3 remotes and a controller, right? So you've got TV remote, receiver remote, Apple TV remote, and
like
then
a basket of remotes.
Yeah, and so it slimmed it down to one remote for all devices except for the Apple TV. And the only reason I didn't use it for the Apple TV is because even at its worst, the Apple TV's remote felt better to use than the Harmony remote for that particular interface.
The Apple remote really, it's not bad in a lot of ways, but where it is bad, it should have never been released kind of bad.
Yeah, I agree.
But I kind of understand it, and I'm like in a place now where I'm like, how long am I going to use this remote? Like, when am I going to break down and buy the new Apple TV, the new Siri remote? I'm not sure, because it's like there are times where I'm like, oh, this is not so bad, and then there are times where like I've never had this kind of problem with the remote before.
I can't help but laugh, only because
you suffered through it for 6 years?
Yeah, and at this point I've now had a week with the new remote. The new remote is so drastically superior to the old one. If you never use it, you won't feel compelled to change it immediately. But if you ever get a chance to use the updated Siri remote, you will want to throw the little diving board Siri remote across the room and never touch it again. It's that kind of difference.
No, I believe that. And, like the whole time, from the moment they announced the new Siri remote, the whole time I've thought about, this should have been the remote from day one, because Apple's so good with scroll wheels. I mean, the scroll wheel is like is an Apple icon. It was on all of the iPods except for that one shuffle. Or the shuffle. It was not on any of the shuffles actually. But it was on all of the major iPods.
So you would think that in practice, the scroll wheel has been the most frustrating use case for me for the new remote.
Oh, that's disappointing.
Well, it's not. If you're in the Apple TV app and using content via it works great once you know how to invoke it. If you are anywhere else, so far it does not seem to work, because there must be some underlying API call that is not present in any of the other apps yet.
That makes a lot of sense. And I can see from app to app on the Apple TV. So I'll say, having gone from a Roku to an Apple TV, thank you for donating. All of the same apps are superior on the Apple TV versus the Roku. The Roku's not bad. Like I was never complaining about the Roku, but they are all better on the Apple TV. I'm having some trouble with the YouTube app from time to time, and it's an issue with the YouTube app, and I have to force quit it. Maybe like once a week, I've had to force quit it because the touchpad is unresponsive in the application. I quit it, restart it, it's fine. But
I've had that happen a couple of times, just like on even the other hardware, even the newest one. So just as a general FYI, that does seem to be a very ubiquitous thing.
Yeah, it's a software issue with the YouTube app. I'm fairly confident in that. I'd be surprised if it wasn't, because none of the other apps use it. And I used so far, for the length of time that I've had the Apple TV, I've pretty much used Netflix, YouTube, and Plex pretty evenly. The part where the Apple TV UI falls down was something that I fixed from listening to another podcast. There would be times where I'm on the main menu, and I'm like, which application do I have selected? And it's the application that you have selected is just slightly bigger. That rectangle that with the rounded corners is just slightly bigger than all the other rectangles with rounded corners. And if you play Silver Surfer with the remote, you can kind of see it, the application rectangle with rounded corners kind of like move around or articulate in the UI the way you're moving the remote. But it's so subtle. And I heard there's an accessibility fix for it. You can go into accessibility. You can switch on focus. That's something I believe it's called focus. And then you have it puts a white highlight around it, and that has, it's not. I look at it now and I'm like, oh yeah, I now feel like this is less elegant, but it's more functional. So that was one of the recent Apple TV things where it's like, there's got to be, can they do something more elegant than the highlight, but more functional than the slightly larger rectangle with rounded corners, and that sort of like articulates when you move the remote around? I think yes, but there's got to be something in between those two.
I wonder how much of that is just having used the OS for so long. I've never really noticed a disconnect between knowing what I have selected and looking at the screen. But behaviorally, when I grab the remote, I tend to hit the back button anyway. Just out of habit, which theoretically, depending on where you've left it, of course, but if you're just picking it up and it's on the home screen, it should return it to the top left, or it should start the screensaver if it's already at the top left. And because I have that just innate or inherent pick it up and press the button as I pick it up, I wonder how much of that is negating any issue with positioning, because I can always assume it's in the top left on the home screen.
Yeah, and that feels like you've adapted to the UI. And so where I haven't used it I haven't used it that long, and so I'm expecting to see some visual cue that tells me exactly where my cursor is, or where what is selected, or what I'm about to select, or what I can select.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I just never even thought about that being a habit that I have until we were talking about it, because I realized I'd never paid attention to what it looks like for it to have something highlighted.
Yeah.
Or selected, I guess, for lack of highlight, because I don't have that feature turned on. But I've never paid attention to that difference. I just always knew that I was starting at point A. And so I would look, and sure enough, point A is selected, and I can scroll up, down, whatever, and select what I want to select. Just behaviorally, I never even paid attention to that. It's something that has never registered before you were describing the issue specifically.
Interesting. Now you're going to notice it.
Maybe, but honestly, I'm so used to that navigation paradigm, I doubt it.
So on the Roku, like that's how they indicate where what you're selecting is with a highlight, just like the accessibility feature in tvOS. And so on the Roku, it's like I don't think anything of it. That's just how you do it. Like that's the obvious way. It is an obvious way of solving that problem. But once I turned it on the Apple TV, and I was like, oh great, it's there, and I was like, oh, it doesn't look as good anymore. Like whereas on the Roku, like it's fine, but on the Apple TV, I'm like, oh, I've made it a little bit less pretty, and I just wasn't expecting myself to be like, I was expecting to be very like, I'm fine with the utilitarian highlight, and now I'm like, oh no.
Yeah, I don't think I would like the highlight. Looking at the screen, as you were describing it, I pulled up what the home screen looked like just to remind myself. I don't want anything extra around that box. I like how subtle it is from a general use case perspective, but that's only because I know where I'm starting from consistently as well.
Yeah, I don't mind subtle, but it was too subtle for me before I made this change. But I'm a clunky Roku user, so I'm coming from there. So I feel like when the Apple TV was running front row, it was very obvious. You had that carousel of selection. So
front row was ridiculously more usable than subsequent iterations. And I do miss that simplicity a lot of times. But I also kind of think it was too simplistic.
Oh no, it was definitely way too simple. Front row is meant to be just like a thing that you could use on your Mac, and it was made for Mac OS 10. That was what they were calling it back in the day. It was made for Mac OS 10. It allowed you to have really good like entertainment, or it turned the display on your Mac into an entertainment center, a really sort of rudimentary one. But at the time, it was better than any of the TVs, and so it was great. But it definitely got long in the tooth really quick. But I would love to see what front row would look like in 2021.
I don't know. I kind of feel like you wouldn't get anything that simplistic today. Because the part of what made Front Row too simplistic was that it lumped everything in a single category. And by that I mean either it was movies or it was music or it was TV. Like one huge overarching category, and then you basically just had a list of items after that.
That's true. I don't know. And I was going to say, I was just thinking it wasn't even movies and TV. It was videos, like movies and like you're in trouble if you didn't have your videos organized. But I think, what was that view? I think it's no longer in Mac OS, but the view, it first came in maybe the iPod Video.
You're talking about the I think it was
the
Carousel?
Artwork. Is it called Carousel?
I think so. The one where you're basically scrolling through large
No,
thumbnails
it's a
of the
carousel.
artwork.
Yeah.
I think it was called Carousel, though.
Yeah, anyway.
You can finish looking it up. I can edit that part out.
Gallery view.
Was it Gallery? I could have sworn it was Carousel. Okay, Gallery.
I mean, it is a carousel, but it's gallery view, and I think the only place that it exists now is you might be able to do it in Keynote. I don't know. Anyway, that I think it was. I think the intention was not the amount of media that we had on our computers at the time that it came out. This is mid 2000s. Was so low that it was not a terrible interface. Like it was an okay interface, and cover flow.
Yeah, there you go.
It's called cover flow. Just came to me. Sorry, I interrupted my own thought. Anyway, with cover flow, you were able to like go through and look at all the things, and it was cool. It was cool on the iPod because you could see your album artwork, which had sort of minimized, and it was a great way to bring back artwork. And then they brought it in to Front Row. I think you could do a cover flow view because it would have like the videos or some thumbnail from the video. But it was just it was a good way to flow through your media if you didn't have a lot of media.
And then it was not long after that technically it was the precursor to Plex, the fork was Xbox Home Theater?
There was something Microsoft-y with that was, yeah. I didn't realize Plex.
I don't remember for sure what the name was, but we'll call it Xbox Media Center because that sounds right. But Windows Media Center was a thing for sure. It and Plex started around the same time and were kind of similar takes on the same kind of idea for the interface, but it was more static menu, and then to the right you would have a single thumbnail or poster that would be representative of the media file. And of course, this was a point where within those particular solutions, you had scrapers available to try to pull information from like IMDb, etc., so that you could get the actual poster artwork for the media in question if it matched appropriately, which is still an issue, but that's a whole separate tangent. But that has evolved significantly over time as well. If you think back to the first iterations, it was much more Front Row-esque, where you would choose a category, and then you would just kind of scroll through in a similar fashion the list of media files. The biggest difference that I remember with Front Row is that you at least had the option to do that kind of cover flow scroll versus just a grid of thumbnails that you did not have otherwise. But where the others really shone was in the ability to sort on the fly based on different criteria because of the metadata information that they pulled.
Yeah.
And that's still something that I really wish you could do in native apps that Plex absolutely has it right, hands down, where you can choose all sorts of different things to sort your media by once you're in the view. And it's annoying that if you go into the Apple TV app and go to your library, you pretty much can only look at it based on whatever categories they have predefined,
Right.
And it's alphabetical only.
Right. But they do update the quality of your videos for free.
That's true, and that's not something that should be dismissed lightly, because that's huge compared to having to buy and re-rip, upgraded versions of media, assuming that you even have the hardware capable to do so.
I know. It's that's one of the most impressive benefits of purchasing from Apple, movies. And now they're about to do it with music, which feels less important. But video, going from if you bought an SD movie, if you bought a movie in SD quality from Apple, and then at some point they're like, hey, it's you now have it in HD, and then they were like, and now you have it in 4K, and so forth. And I expect them to keep doing that, and that's like a huge benefit to purchasing through them.
Yeah, it's the only reason that I have purchased through them for some pieces of media. I still have issues buying movies through the iTunes store, for lack of better phrasing, because that's what it's still referred to on iOS.
Yeah.
And I don't have a good reason for it, other than there are times that I want to take a movie on the go easily, and the easiest way I have to do so, assuming a lack of connectivity, is to have it in Plex and synchronize it with the device in question. Let Plex handle the transcoding and copy over to the client on that device. I know that you can download the movie via Apple as well for offline viewing for that specific reason, but it's not as user-friendly as it should be to make that happen.
Right. So, and that's a big thing about having disc, but the sweet spot is trying to find the disc with a digital download. I don't have that many, but I try to find the Blu-ray with the digital download. Because I've got I bought the Back to the Future trilogy on Blu-ray 11 years ago, and it came with a digital download code, so I have those in iTunes, and I'm looking at iTunes right now, or no, the Apple TV app right on my Mac right now, and I can watch the Back to the Future trilogy in 4K HDR with Dolby Atmos, which I did not buy. It's now a better quality video than my disc. Those
Yeah, I definitely am 100% on board with the fact that purchasing the movies that way is great, up until the point where you need some level of consumption outside of the Apple TV or iTunes app conglomerates.
Well, see, that was me for a long time because I didn't have an Apple TV. There was no Apple TV app for Roku or any of the non-Apple TVs devices or TVs until it's either 2019 or 2020. That was 2019 where that came out. So for me to take advantage of that, it was something that I had to go to my computer because I didn't have an Apple TV. But now, as of the past 2 years, that sort of went away. I haven't looked to see if I can watch it in that resolution on the Roku app, but neither my TVs or other devices support anything beyond 1080. But it's there.
And in fairness, like I don't have any 4K rips of anything anyway. Like all of my rips are 1080p because I don't have a drive that will play 4K to rip from.
Right.
And
are there even 4K discs?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, the discs are. I have a number of discs that are specifically 4K. Like I'll buy, if I buy a movie, I buy the combo package that has the 4K disc and the Blu-ray disc. So I do have, I don't know,
I haven't
30 or 40 4K discs, I guess.
Okay. I haven't done I haven't. It's one of the things where it's like I've paid attention to the, there's a graph that shows you how big is your display, what's the resolution of the display, how far away are you from the display, and everything's good enough. Like my 1080 right now is good enough for the rooms that I'm using. One day, but I've been to Costco. I've seen the 4K TVs. They look great, but there's going to be a point where, resolution isn't going to change much. Like, is 8K going to be a thing? It's going to be a thing on cameras for sure, but I don't know. Are we going to see an 8K television? Well, it's going to have to, on a big television, yes, but I don't think, in the 60-inch range, I'm not sure that we'll see an 8K anytime soon. And if we do, it's like, I don't think I'm going to be in a room that will allow me to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I think I've mentioned it before. The only reason I even changed from the 1080p TV that I had to the 4K one actually was not for the 4K resolution anyway. It was for the ultra high definition color representation.
Yeah. Like colors, the colors are going to be advancing more than resolution. So,
yeah, I just wanted to be able to see at least more of the color spectrum than what was shown to me. And honestly, in a lot of content, it doesn't matter one way or another. There are a handful of things where I can see a pretty marked difference, and those things I enjoy it for. But that was, like, going into it, I knew that I wasn't going to be blown away by the difference between what I had and what I was going to. I just knew that it was going to be noticeable enough for certain content and something that I would appreciate.
Yeah, it's like I know that I'm not going to have an IMAX experience at my house. And the gap between standard definition and HD was massive. And even even going from interlace to progressive scan, at 1080 is also fairly significant. Like I feel like 1080i is so jarring at times. But beyond that, yeah, I can tell the difference, but it's not that big gap between standard definition and 1080. Like that was a huge gap, and I don't think we'll see. I don't feel that we've seen that gap since then.
No, not yet. I do wonder if it's coming with the next couple of years. So we'll back up slightly. Theoretically, you should be able to see that on today's top-of-the-line monster displays. If you have something that has, what are they calling it? It's high frame rate, ultra HD, wide color spectrum. I don't even know what the terminology is anymore. But if you go absolutely top of the line, you should theoretically be able to see a similar type of difference between that particular display and absorbing the content and a 1080p display without that. Will you notice that kind of difference if you are doing the stair-step approach where you go from 1080p to 4K to 4K UHD to the current top of the line? Probably not. Again, it's not a big enough difference.
Right.
But if you think about the reason 1080p versus standard definition was so jarring, it was a similar change from standard definition to 1080p as what you would get from 1080p to whatever the 4K ultra high frame rate, high definition, wide color gamut space, whatever that terminology actually is today. And what that really means in the grand scheme of the market itself is we're not going to see widespread adoption of that for at least another 2 years, if not longer.
Right.
And that's when you'll start to really see a difference.
That makes sense. There wasn't a lot of stair stepping between standard definition and 1080p. You had 1080i, which was, obviously different, and like even 720p. 720p is so much better than 480i, so much better. I mean, I can sit and tell the difference between 720p, 1080i, and 1080p, no problem. And I can definitely see the difference between a 4K, but I've never sat and actually viewed something in 4K. Like I've never sat down in a living room and watched a 4K TV, where I've done it plenty of times, with 1080. But I will say the thing that would make me want to watch things in the best resolution possible is going to be nature videos. Like I think movies will be great, but like when National Geographic goes out and they record everything in these IMAX cameras, oh, so cool. I loved 11 years ago when I was able to watch Planet Earth on a 1080 screen on Blu-ray. It was great. It was one of the best, like I grew up watching the Discovery Channel when the Discovery Channel was, a lot of animals and that sort of thing. And it was very much like, what Planet Earth was like a solution to what happened to the Discovery Channel. And so it was just a really great experience. And that would be something where I want to watch the nature shows and like top quality displays.
Yeah, that so I will say watching the Planet Earth stuff in 4K, you do appreciate the difference. But what that made me think of, have you watched any of Earth at Night in color?
No, but I really want to watch that. I saw that and I'm just like, when am I going to watch this? Like I want to because I want it to be a thing. Like I want to sit down and like actually like watch it, not just like, I don't know. There's certain things I feel like I was like, I can just watch this movie. I can just watch this TV show. I can watch this series. But like I want to sit down and have like a viewing experience of something like that.
So we watched the first episode of it. And for those people who may not be aware, this is an Apple TV Plus show. And the first episode was phenomenal. Absolutely loved it. And realized at that point, no, I want to sit and really enjoy subsequent episodes because it is very, very much that type of thing where you want the experience.
This is something that requires a viewing experience.
Right. And so what I was going to follow on with that is that might be a good trial or experiment, if you will, of having you come out and be a part of enjoying that on a 4K TV and then watch it on yours and see if you tell a difference.
Oh, I will tell a difference. I won't. I mean, yeah, this would be a good experiment, but yeah. Yeah, that just sounds like fun.
Well, and that's the whole point. I mean, it just sounds like something fun we could do anecdotally and in addition to everything else. And so I will extend the invitation.
Totally, yeah. And just to bring this back around to the LG TV, does your LG TV have a feature that dims the display when blacks are shown?
It's supposed to. I turned it off.
I can't turn it off on mine. It's by far the worst feature of the television.
Interesting.
Yeah, I've looked, and the model LG that I have, I can't do it.
So it may not be the same feature per se, but what I noticed is having any eco-style or eco-friendly mode or anything set that theoretically influenced energy saving created that behavior. And so I turned everything related to any type of energy saving or throttling or anything else off.
Ooh, I need to go look in the energy savings because I don't think I didn't. I'm looking in picture for that setting.
Yeah, I am not a good steward when it comes to electricity consumption on the TV because I turn anything off that could affect it in any way, shape, fashion, or form. I don't mind turning off my equipment and having it in standby, but it has to be when I tell it to do so. I don't let the TV control any of that.
Yeah, I turn my television off when I'm not using it, and when I am using it, I want the whole panel to be lit. Well, I don't want there to be obvious dimming, and it actually and the picture suffer from energy savings. I was like, I'm watching TV here. I have it set on timers so that it turns, like if I were to fall asleep, it turns off.
Yeah, I have to disable the sleep timer because I use the receiver to control the input. And so because I'm not interacting with the TV, it will think there's been no interaction, even though I've been interacting with the other devices that are connected to the TV.
Yeah.
But I get around that by I do have a automation set up that will trigger a shortcut to turn everything off in the event that I did not.
Oh, nice.
It's never triggered, but I have it there just as a precaution.
That's good. I actually really love the way the Apple TV sleeps. And before when I was using a Roku, I've never explored to see if there's a sleep feature, but I would just use the dumb sleep feature like that's been on TVs since the 90s, maybe the 80s. Just tell it to sleep in X number of minutes. Like if I'm in bed at night, then I always use that because if I fall asleep at 3 or 4 a.m., I'll wake up and that could ruin my sleep because the TV being on will wake me up. So I always put a sleep timer on.
Yeah, that's the one thing that Emily and I did agree on was we decided not to put a TV in the bedroom, mostly so we wouldn't have a scenario where sleep would be interrupted by the TV. But the drawback to that is a lot of times I'll be in the living room and I'll start to doze off, and it's comfortable enough that I just roll over and go to sleep. And so that's where having that shortcut available to turn everything off makes a huge difference.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I have a room by myself, so I put a TV in there, and it keeps me from being lonely at night. With that,
yeah, so there was a short time that I actually had my desk in the bedroom, and so there was a monitor in there, and so I hooked up an Apple TV to it because, of course, why wouldn't I? That has since relocated to a different room, but I've agreed on that principle just because it helps me get better sleep too.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, I think we've kind of beat general entertainment into submission.
Yeah. I mean, my final thought on it is that I feel like there was definitely room with entertainment UI. There was like thinking of televisions in the 90s. Menus on VCR menus and so forth. There was definitely room for improvement, but I really don't feel that the improvements that we've seen have been up to par. Like there's the headroom for improvement is vast.
Yeah, I would say there are certainly UIs that are more preferential to use than others, but none of them really have it nailed down in this is a joy to use yet. I think that my favorite UI would have to be Plex, but it requires so much work to make sure it works appropriately on the back end that's kind of questionable, right?
Yeah.
Outside of that, all of them, I can point to at least 5 different things that are in need of improvement to make it more enjoyable and more pleasing of an experience.
Yeah. I was going to say the same. Plex is the one that I feel has the best UI, maybe followed by Netflix. But I don't know how much of that is that I'm just used to Netflix versus that it's actually good.
I think it's more that you're used to it, because Netflix's UI isn't horrible, but it irritates me because of the way they lump categories and everything that you have no control over.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's good. It's just the one that has been around the longest. So it's the one that I have subconsciously set as a standard to compare others to.
Yeah, and I'll just reiterate, it's not that it's bad. It's just there's a lack of customization, and that's what really makes all of the other UIs subpar. Because at the end of the day, when you want to enjoy media content, you want some control over what's presented to you, and you don't really get that with any service.
No.
But I do think that kind of summarizes the thoughts well for the show. Did you have any other final wrap up or?
No, that was my final wrap up. That was my stay frosty part.
All right. Well, I that's certainly good enough to call it a show for me. I'm looking forward to WWDC. I think that's going to be a fun one.
Oh yeah, me too.
And after that, I'm looking forward to potentially introducing some new stuff as far as the show is concerned.
Yeah, me too. I had an idea today.
Yeah, we'll touch base in the next couple of days and iron out some of that behind the scenes details.
Awesome.
Means I'm going to have to record a new outro. I'm good with that.
Okay.
All right. Well, have a good one.
You too.
Good night.
Good night.
You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at untitled_hosts. Send us an email at untitled.hosts@gmail.com or follow the feed directly at the untitledpodcast.com. You can also find all sorts of ways to contact Jesse at jthart.com. Thank you for listening. That's a wrap.